kicked out. She's trying to get back in. She thinks it's maybe the internet. She's calling if she can't. So go ahead and do what you think, but don't call in Shari because she's not here.
Don't call in Shari. Okay, so we'll start with Shari. See, funny.
We can all answer for her.
And now for something completely different.
But Tricia, I want to start with you, primarily because you're at the beginning of the book. So, why did you guys decide to I suppose, create and publish a book?
Well, I would love to take credit for it, but it was Shari's idea. And I think, and she can talk to more about it, but I think, we had been in this networking group for, 5-6 months. And I think we all recognized that we had something unique going on here. It was, in this chat that people would show up in, you had such variety of conversations. You had laughter, you had tears, you had anger, you had every emotion that ran the gamut, and you had every experience that ran the gamut. And I think at some point, maybe Shari's light bulb went off that said, this would be a great thing to put in a book. And, of the 50 women that were in the group at the time, 20 of us could say yes to it at that time. And then we just started to make it happen. So I think it's such a unique group, and it seemed to make sense to try to capture some of that uniqueness and put our individual experiences down.
Okay, no, that makes sense. And so the thing I liked about your segment, right, is that we all love a bit of Grant Cardone. Right.
I love Grant, 10X.
Oh, man. For us Brits, though, he's probably a bit too American, if we can say that. So I think a lot of people have read 10X, but what did you take away from that? Because for me personally, I find it scary even trying to 1X something, right? So how did you kind of take that kind of mentality into what you've done, certainly through this kind of COVID experience?
So his book for me was really a mindset book. I don't know if there's a literal 10X of it. It's more of thinking bigger, acting bigger, doing bigger. I think for me, I was raised in a lower middle class family. We never talked about wealth. We never talked about growth. And in my mind, I had this ceiling on what I could do. And after I read his book, I'm like, why do I have a ceiling on what I can do? There really is no ceiling. And at that point, after I read him, I started thinking bigger. I started thinking differently. And I think that's really what it did for me. But his is really, you should if you think going to 100 seminars in a year is going to get you what you need to do, then you need to multiply that by 10. If you think you want to make $1 million, multiply that by 10 and think about what that takes to get there. And I was fascinated by it. I got it instantly. And I'm like, all right, let's see how we can apply this to real life. I applied it to my career. I applied it to my home life. And it really just changed my life because I got rid of that ceiling.
That is cool. I'm terrible at that stuff. So I'm completely enamored with people who will take that stuff to that degree. But like I said, do you think that, and I think everybody's kind of with an entrepreneurial flair in them. I think so. I always try to look for silver linings and stuff. I'm sure you guys do as well. And do you think that COVID has kind of driven your kind of entrepreneurial spirit to kind of think about what can I do, right? So in your book, everybody on this call has gone and done almost something for themselves, right? Through COVID. And do you think that would have happened at all if we didn't have the year we just had?
I mean, I can only speculate. I want to say no. I mean, I can tell you, I would not have done the things this year that I have done without the group. The group got me thinking differently. I mean, I never would have written this book. I never thought about writing a book until I was two things. I did a podcast about lawyers that write for fun. And I'm like, who does that? That's just crazy. And that in conjunction with Shari dropping that comment in the chat, I was like, well, why not? Why not? But I never would have thought of that if we were in the traditional, I don't know, normal, if you will, where we're going to lunches and seminars and things. But this group really introduced some new concepts to me. And I've written another book since. So it's just snowball. So I don't know that I would be in this position without the COVID lockdown and having to rethink how we're networking. And I'm very thankful for everything that's happened last year.
Great. Thanks, Tricia. So I probably should talk to Shari. So where are you, Shari?
I am on my iPhone because my internet seems to go out a lot during really important calls and meetings. But I'm on my iPhone. I'm in New York City. So sorry if we're shaking a little bit. This is not an earthquake. It's just me holding my phone. My arm getting tired. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. I have internet issues all the time, right? Because I've got two kids under the age of 4, and we when they were born, we promised they would never see YouTube until they're 21. They've now watched more YouTube than I probably could ever do. So it's the world we live in, and so if my internet's down, I will need to go and shout at a Matilda or a Mabel. So bear with me. But really, kind of your passage within the book. The key thing that stood out to me was effectively your main heading, right? Tomorrow is promised to no one. Can you, for the benefit of the people who have read it or are about to read it or thinking about reading it, why was that such a important statement for you when writing your element of this book?
Well, tomorrow is promised to no one is kind of my cynical take on carpe diem, seize the day. Really, it's kind of the flip side of the coin. And it's just a theme that's really resonated through my life and through my career. And I kind of walk through my life and through my career. We started 9/11 where I was taking depositions at the World Trade Center every day. I was not scheduled to take one on that fateful day. And that's really just kind of informed my worldview about tomorrow being promised to no one. And then, we go through, I'm very personal, we go through my infertility journey, kind of how it intersects with my career journey. And we end up with, it was March. I had, my career was going great at the company I was with. I had 10 speaking engagements lined up, and all of a sudden I didn't. Tomorrow was promised to no one. And I was actually on Tricia's podcast, which is how I finally joined this networking group. And that podcast was March 10th. If that podcast was scheduled any later, I feel like none of this would have happened. So, timing and sort of that temporal element of life is just so important to me, and it just kind of resonates through my chapter.
No, it's true. And so why a book, right? So obviously Tricia took all the glory and said she just thought this was a good idea and then said that you should do it. That's British humor, but bear with me. So why write a book? Because a lot of people think about writing a book. Like sometimes I wake up and think that writing a book would be a good idea. Then I go to bed that night and go, writing a book would be a terrible idea. So why did you, why write this? Why did you think this would be a good idea?
Well, okay. So as far as, I talked a little bit about my worldview, but I'm just like a very imaginative, creative person. Like I live in my head. I live in sort of a fantasy world, which was one of the great things about getting hooked up with this group of ladies, because they are executors. And so since the start of the pandemic, I was living in my fantasy world. It was 1348. It was the bubonic plague in Florence. And the Decameron, which is a story that took place during the plague about a bunch of young adults who went to the Florentine countryside to wait it out, to social distance, kept each other amused by telling stories about the human condition. So I'm kind of living in my fantasy world about this. And the Canterbury Tales was actually based on the Decameron. And it was in the back of my head the whole time. And just one night we were all chatting, because this group actually became so much more than a professional group. It actually became a very supportive group. And we were just chatting, and a topic about children's books came up, and I just kind of just regurgitated this. Well, wouldn't it be cool if we do this? We're living through a moment in history, and we all have our stories, and they're different, and we're all so different. And if 10 people will do this, I'll do this. And I didn't know how I would do it. I'm not really an executor. I think of myself as an ideas person. And that's really the beautiful part of this book is everyone contributed their own talents. Like I like to joke, no one was asking me to handle the finances. I was not setting up the LLC. And everybody really just took their talents and made it happen. So that's I guess that's the long version.
No, I love a long version, right? So, and I assume, was it easy, medium, or impossible to get everybody to do this, right? Because like it just sounds like a monumental effort, right? Not only writing a book alone, but writing it with 20 people.
Well, we're talking about 20 women lawyers, very strong personalities. I'm not going to say it was all smooth sailing, but everybody in this group is a hand raiser. Can you do this webinar? Yes. Do you want to write an article? Yes. Will you volunteer to speak to law students? Yes. So as far as getting people on board, I think people were really excited. Maybe, that wasn't hard. I think we had 20 people like really from the jump.
Awesome. But thank you. And we'll come back. So Veronica, where are you? Talk, Veronica.
Right here.
Hey, how you doing? You good?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm good. You almost fooled me with your background. I thought it was going to be one of those, like, because I think you can buy designer Zoom backgrounds now, right?
Yeah, you can. Absolutely.
I think Deb's got one. Deb, I see her background sometimes. I'm like, that's too cool to be real.
People can't tell.
If you stay super still, right. You're fine, right?
Yep, exactly.
But so there's a saying in the UK called it's actually funny enough, it's no guts, no glory, right? And so I'm a big fan of that from a saying in the UK, mainly because I support a terrible soccer team, right? So you can use American football if you wish, but we try really hard, but we're a bit rubbish, right? So it's no guts, no glory is how we work. But that's a side note. But obviously your statement around no grit, no glory really kind of resonated with me, right? Because it's almost about you have to put in the long yards. You have to be determined to get what you want out of it.
Yeah.
And I suppose for me that kind of resonates because again, I'm not built for education, right? So I have to work harder than most people to get through things. But how why that statement, and then why have you done with that statement in regards to the last year as well? Would be lovely to hear from you about.
Yeah. So I believe that anytime you face a challenge, I don't see problems. And it's something that I picked up from years ago, reading a book called Emotional Intelligence. That book focuses on the and I'm getting nerdy here because obviously, super nerd here, but the book talks in one chapter about yes, I love it. The biochemical reactions in your body when you're stressed are very similar to those of when you're excited. So anytime I'm stressed, I try to go towards that mental state where I think to myself and I say to myself, this is going to be exciting. That way I flip my mind frame. I don't do it all the time, but I do practice on doing that. And so for me, using that statement, no grit, no glory, it means that if you want something, if you want the glory, whether it's getting to your goals, getting the dream job for law students or for students in general, getting an internship that they want, or building the skills that they need to get to where they want on a professional level, that they have to put in the work. And it's something that I talk about with my mentees, with colleagues, and especially with the last year, there were so many students that had their internships withdrawn, or they were, a lot of companies got very scared, and I believe some very prematurely up front, and they started laying people off or furloughing, or again, taking away internships. So helping others in really worse situations than I was, right? Like I had all my basic needs taken care of. I had friends who needed help with rent or paying for books or just whatever. So focusing on areas where I could support with the mental mental shift to being positive, but also focusing on a plan, being strategic. That's one of the things I focus on my book. Don't just face the challenge, but create a plan. And for me, as a somewhat recent law graduate, I've been practicing close to 3 years. Having a plan was key in having I would say a very successful first year as an associate, because I laid out all the skills I needed to hit. When my specific group didn't have that work, I went hunting, right? I looked for anyone who could give me the work, anyone who would help me with the skills. And those are things that I focus on helping my students. I have close to 50 law students that I'm mentoring. I do conference calls. Yeah, but the way I do it is...
How many? Whoa, 250, did you say?
No, 50. Just 50.
I was going to say, 50 is too many as it is. How do you find time? So seriously, how do you find time to give 50 people the time that they need? Is it
using technology? We have conference calls once a month where we touch specific areas, and the students who need immediate help, I tell them, reach out. And that's another thing that I focus on. You need to ask for help. You need to ask for the support. And that is something, going back to the book and to our group, it's been something phenomenal, amazing, that I would have never expected to have from last year, from 2020. The group of women that, like all of us who wrote this book and everyone who's part of this networking group, we support each other. We're funny. We support each other. We reach out. We talk about kids, personal matters. We talk about work. But we truly, truly care about each other and support each other in our personal and professional endeavors.
I want to read a line from which actually really resonated with me from you. So it's about champions, right? So champions go a step beyond mentors. Champions are people who are willing to use their political or professional capital to your benefit. I love the fact that you've almost provided an upper echelon to mentoring, right? So you've got mentors, but then you've got champions, right? So I love that. Why did you? I'm going to give you all the credit and say you invented it. So good stuff. But so why did you come up with that? Why separate the two?
Because mentors can give you the information that you need and lead you to execute it. Champions go that extra step and tell you, after talking to you, after building a relationship with you and learning about your enthusiasm and your energy about doing A, B, C, or X, Y, and Z, I want to connect you with someone who can help you make it happen. So that's where the social capital, where when I connect my mentees with someone, I tell them up front, I'm about to connect you with someone I respect. You're not messing this up. You're going to, I tell them, you're going to succeed because we're going to give you the tools you need. So it's not much that, like wigging my finger at them and saying you're not going to fail, but it's more telling them we are going to support you above and beyond just telling you what to do. We're going to guide you. And I think that's where champions come into play. They've come into play for me even before I applied for law school. I didn't have, and I always tell mentees, I didn't have the best grades. My LSATs weren't the best, but I had people who believed in me and who said, yes, I support you and I will take that extra step to make things happen for you.
I love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We've got Jamie.
Hi, Rob.
Hey, Jamie. How you doing?
Hello. Oh, I'm fine.
So are you? Do you live on campus or where are you in the world?
Campus? No, I'm up here in Maine.
Maine.
Northern. Yes. I'd say it's cold, but we're having a very mild winter this year. I was actually just thinking back this morning with my husband when my daughter was born, and the whole month of January, I think we were in single digits the whole month. So this feels quite balmy.
I find that really hard to believe with that really thick coat you're wearing, but it's so warm. It's so warm. But so from your perspective, I thought that we probably should talk a little bit about LinkedIn, because that's fundamentally what's all brought us together. So obviously reading your chapter, you mentioned like you didn't really join LinkedIn to kind of like 2008, right? So, and then for 12 years didn't do a lot. So what happened between kind of it being a place just to update your CV to a point where you wrote a book? How did that happen for you?
Oh, that's a good question. I think, for a long time, and I mentioned this in my chapter, when I worked in the public sector, it was really impressed upon us that, we can't be out there in public in an individual or personal way, or at least that's how I understood my role within a state agency. And so I just didn't do anything with LinkedIn. And then when I switched to the private sector, and started to see LinkedIn shift from what I thought was just like an online resume to people posting. And I started to get curious, right? Like, what is this thread? Why are people posting? What do you do with it? And so just kind of, tentatively started posting a little bit more and announcing when I had a, presentation. And I really didn't do much more than that. But I attended a conference up here in Maine, the Maine Women's Conference in the fall of 2019. And that for me was kind of that aha moment that I think many of us have had, that click of, I need to advocate for myself and speak out for myself and own the fact that I'm good at what I do and I love what I do. And I saw LinkedIn as an opportunity for me to kind of test my voice, if you will, to find a voice and to use it to advocate for myself and kind of share not only my knowledge, but that confidence with others.
Did you find that scary to start with, or were you just like a rock star straight out of the gate?
No, I did find it very scary. Just the, like, how do you write? What do you put in a post? What is going to connect and resonate? I had no idea. So it was scary, kind of learning from the others here on, I think back, Deb, as don't just like drop and leave. And I feel like I was that person when I was starting. I was like, okay, here's my presentation.
I'll see ya.
See you, goodbye. And so kind of learning how to write, learning how to connect and how to be vulnerable and genuine and still intellectual and professional. And yeah, it's an ever evolving process, but it's certainly much better now than it was 10 months ago.
Yeah, no, that's it, right? You just got to take that first step into this stuff. And as I'm sure you know, right, you've got to show a certain level of vulnerability on profile platforms like that. So I'm sure you agree with me when I say there's nothing worse than seeing a corporate LinkedIn message, right? That's just like it's so bad. And the second thing that's worse to that is seeing like a senior, like a partner, having to copy and paste in a corporate message, right? Because it's just super dull. But so do you when you're posting, do you have a process you follow, or do you schedule things? Let me know a little bit about how you do it, if that's okay.
Yeah, I don't schedule things, but I do have kind of a general theme, if you will, to how I post in the week. And that really is driven by my first post of the week. Usually that's Monday, but if it's a long weekend, it's Tuesday or whatever. It is about gratitude, something that I'm thankful for. And I really started this practice with the pandemic because it for me was a way to set my mindset from the very beginning of the week on something positive, something that I was thankful for and grateful for that had made an impact on me over the course of the last week, and use that to kind of set the tone for the rest of the week for me. And it's probably my favorite set of posts for the week to write, something that I am, it's highlighting other people that have made a difference for me, highlighting things that I learned, I forget what it was. Last week it was music, because, I am a musician. In the wake of the, a lot of the political volatility now, I have turned to music again, and use it kind of my soundtrack for the background. Right?
Nice. What do you play?
I sing.
You sing? No way. I'm not going to ask you to sing, but no, that's cool.
I'm like our chat's version of Weird Al Yankovic, or at least that's my joke now. Shari writes the lyrics, and then I put a little snippet of 10 seconds or so in the chat. It's just a way to, keep our mood light and levity and bad parodies on COVID. I'm waiting for March 13th because the Rent parody just ripped itself, and who knows.
I'm excited. Right, so there was this thing many years ago called Top of the Pops in the UK, and I'm sure you would have been on it. But no, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Jamie. So we got Olivia.
I'm here.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, Rob. Good. How are you?
I'm good. So I've seen you talk and be on LinkedIn. So before I kind of get into your chapter, can you explain your board? Because I've wanted to ask you this question a million times. I'm like, what? I'm trying to work out how to spell it. But so can you talk me through this?
So this is the coaching tool I use, and Kristen's chapter touches on this a bit. Mine does too. It's really what got me out of my own shell and active on LinkedIn, because I saw everyone kind of freaking out in the beginning of the pandemic. And I was like, circumstances are neutral, and everyone's freaking out. No one knows this. I have to tell everyone. So the premise is this. It's the initials are CTFAR. And the premise starts with that circumstances, which are facts that we would all agree upon, no adjectives, no qualifiers, no descriptions. Circumstances themselves are neutral. We're not taught that growing up. We're taught that circumstances are either positive or negative, but really that's not the case. What's happening there is our brain serves us up a thought basically immediately about a neutral circumstance. So circumstances are neutral. Our brain serves us up a thought about it. Our thoughts are positive or negative. And it's our positive or negative thought that causes how we feel. Feelings are just one word emotions that we experience in our body: nervous, angry, scared, embarrassed, excited, right? So circumstances are neutral. Thoughts aren't. They're positive or negative. Thoughts cause our feelings. Feelings drive our action that we take or don't take, for the procrastinators out there. Feelings drive our action, and action creates our results. So most of self-help and wellness focuses on the action line, but doesn't really dive into the mindset that's going on behind causing the problem. So the coaching that I do really focuses on what you're thinking about the circumstance and how it's making you feel and how you're showing up because of it.
How do you change people's mindset, right? Because like I'm not quite a emotive bloke, so like I get affected by a circumstance pretty quick. So how do you go like, Rob, chill out, right? How do you get someone to kind of almost take that step back? I'm intrigued to understand that.
So when I work with clients going through the model, a lot of it's repetition, right? So they might be able to see it with one thing, but then they'll bring me something else and they're like, this isn't neutral. This can't be neutral, Olivia.
This can't be neutral. Yeah.
This is just, or I'm talking to my mom and she's like, it's not neutral. It's factually rude. I'm like, okay, your sister doesn't think it's rude, so not everyone would agree, right?
Yeah.
So I point out to them, we separate the fact from the story we're telling about it, right? We look for those adjectives. And then I point out different ways that someone else who's viewing that same situation could possibly see it, how I might see it differently, how someone, in your circle might see it differently. And the more repetition you get going through different situations, applying this formula, applying the model, you start to see that, the way that I'm thinking about this, because I think something's rude, because I think something's unfair, I feel offended or victimized or outraged, all of those things. Or we think, positive thoughts about things too. And then we feel excited and happy and proud. But you just formulaically go through, separate the facts, and then you find what you're thinking about it. And the point of coaching isn't to feel like Pollyanna or great about everything, but it's to recognize that there's a causal relationship between your thoughts and your feelings in any given circumstance. And typically what happens is that pretty quickly, once you realize that you're really in control of the dial as far as your emotions are concerned, you start to course correct and choose better. Because if you realize that you have the power to think about something differently and then feel differently because of it, you'll start to do it.
That makes sense. I suppose it's just kind of that repetition, right? So so from your chapter, like I'm a big believer in just showing up, right? And that's actually what I really love from your piece is that like in sales, right? It's all about you just got to show up, and like it may go wrong, you may crash and burn, but you've got to kind of open that door. So is that kind of the mentality you kind of had over the last kind of 12 months? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So one of the coaches that I really learned from sales and just marketing and, branding, her concepts are really simple. Meet people, tell them what you do, make offers. And I was so in my own head about what former colleagues of mine would think. And then the pandemic happened, and being part of these two totally different worlds, coaches who were like, now's our time to help people manage their minds and not freak out and not, lose track of what they're trying to achieve and their goals and everything like that. And then I was also part of the legal industry and seeing attorneys freak out and kind of freeze. And it really got me out of my own way, so to speak, that apprehension of like putting myself out there and starting to show up. And I just decided that I was going to meet people and tell as many people as possible that their thoughts cause their feelings and that they can really go through and leverage this experience like everyone in our group has to make the most of it and come out ahead rather than, Kristen talks about this in her chapter. She has a great saying, accelerate through the curve, right? Not getting stuck. So being part of both of those worlds really pushed me forward to start getting my own message out there. And I just started day after day, just a little bit. I actually had COVID in March and decided that like, I still need to help the people and I can help them from my, tiny little office. So just a little bit each day, met more people, put my own content out there. And, it's like little paving your own path, so to speak, one brick at a time. And eventually just everything started to take off. So I've been very fortunate. Showing up incrementally over time has been everything in my business.
And also, you look so professional with your microphone, I must say.
Thank you.
Thank you. You look like a newsreader. I love it. It's very cool. It's very cool.
Thank you.